previous lecture before the break, we had started how to read from a file or how to write from a file, how to write to a file. And in order to do that, what we were doing is, now I will go to my code. The first thing we have to do is, I will slightly zoom in. Okay, am I not able to do it here? Anyhow, I need to open this. We need to open a document. So in that one, by using this open function, in which we have to give the file name, and then here we declare what we want to do. If we put R, which means that we want to read. If you want to write, we put W. And then we can write any code in that. But what I want to show you is, let's say that I just opened the file by this write command, and I just closed it. I didn't do anything. I just open it and then close it. Okay, and then let's check this. Let's check this document, which is here. So let's check its content. Here you see its content. I'll just make it a little bit bigger. It has this kind of a content. So what will happen if I just run this code in which I just open the document and then close it? Do you have any idea? Like when you might expect that, okay, nothing will happen because we just open and close that. But when we run this code, okay, then I just open and close it. Now I'll go back to my file. I need to close it and then reopen it to see its new content. The content is, as you can see, empty, completely empty. Now, what we see here is that when you are using this write command, you really have to be careful about it because it's very powerful. Like you might have a really long document, but if you just open it with this W command and then close it, nothing else, you are not doing any more option. You know, just open and close it. You will lose all the content in that file immediately. So it basically, if there's any content in that, it deletes it, erases it, and then whatever you want to write, you can write and so on. But so if you don't want this to happen, what we should do, like if let's say that we have this content here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and then I just want to I just want to write some more content. I don't want to delete these existing lines, okay? So for that one, what I have to do is I need to change my my version of writing, which is instead of putting W, I will say A. So A basically stands for append. So basically, I will add some more data to the end of the file. Okay, so it will not delete its content, but it will just append more. So let's say that, okay, I open my file with this command A, and then I will basically, then I can just write my data, which is, let's say, my appended data. And then I will just close, then I will just run it. Then I'll go back to my code again, my data again. What we will see, I need to close the document and open it to see my new, to see its new content. So when I see this document, let me zoom in. Now you can see that now it didn't delete any of its data. They are still there, but it also appended my new text that I put on the code. So basically, to sum up, now I'll go back to my slide because it's also showing that. If you don't want to delete the content of a file, but you just want to append some more data in that, then we should use this status to A. Like we open the file, when we are opening, we will say that, okay, we are in this append mode. And then, well, we will basically write whatever we want to put, and then we'll close the data. In this example, let's assume that this friends.txt file has this content, already these 2 lines, and then we put all this additional 3 lines, And then eventually what we will have is in the final document is these 6 lines, 3 coming from the beginning, and these 3 lines are the ones that we just put. Any questions so far? Shall I proceed to the next slide? All right. And when we are writing a data to a file, we are always doing operations in terms of strings. So when we are reading the data, it's actually a string. And when we want to write the data, it should be also still a string. So what it means is, now let's go to our code. Let's say that I want to append some data to my code in which I want to write some maybe numerical data. Maybe I have some values here. Let's say that 5 plus 10. And maybe I have some float numbers. And maybe even I can have a Boolean value. Like maybe I have some C value is just a Boolean value. So, and I want to write it to my file. I'm trying to actually zoom in and make this a little bit bigger. That's why I'm. Is there a zoom in option? I couldn't find. Anyway, is this readable? Is this part readable by everyone? At the end of the class, it's readable? Okay. So let's say, okay, I want to write it. If it is readable, then I can continue. I want to write this data to my file. So what I need to do is my file object dot write, with lowercase, of course. And then if I just put this total, which is a number, okay, and I try to write it, well, what I will get is actually just an error. So my code will not be able to finish, because the thing is, whatever I want to write, I should write it as a string, not like a number, integer or a float number or as a Boolean. So, or if I try to write, in all of these I will get an error. Like if I try to write it as a float, I put the float number here, and when I try to run it, I will get an error. If I try to write this this Boolean variable, if I try to run it, I will get an error. So what I should do is then, okay, I want to write this data. Well, what I have to do is I need to convert it to a string before I write it. So how can I do it? Well, Python has this built-in function str, which means string. So basically it takes one parameter and then it converts it to a string. So when I write it, what I should do is my file object dot write, and then str, in that one I will put my integer, or I will put my float number variable, or I will put my Boolean variable. So when I do this, now it converts it to strings. So when I run this code now, I will not get an error, as you can see. And then now let's go to our data and let's refresh its content. So here what you see is, let me also make it a little bit bigger. Okay, 155.3 and true. There's no spaces, it's not pretty readable. The reason is that we didn't put any new line character here, that's why. But so we can also put here some new line character so that it will be a more readable data. So let's do it. So I need to get 15, 5.3 and true. So when I run this code again, it will append the data. So what I mean is, when I run this code, it should add some more lines here, and let's just refresh its content. Yes, now let me also again make it bigger and zoom in. Now as you can see that now it could print this 15, 5.3 and true. Any questions so far? So just to what you should memorize is when you want to write some non-string data to an object, to a file, you have to first convert it by using this str function. And in this example, well, we open the document, we ask user to enter three numbers, and then we write them to that file, again by converting into string, and then we close the file. Well, similar thing happens when we are reading the data. When we are reading the data, even though the data content might be some numbers like 5, 10, 20, whatever, but still we read it as a string. So when we are reading the data, like as in this example, so we open the file by reading option, and then when we say that, okay, in file, which is our file object, that read line gives us one line from that document, and then it gives us as a string. So if I know that it is an integer, and I want to do some operations later on, then I need to convert it to integer by using this int function. Like this is very similar to what we do with the input function that we use. So we ask user to provide us some data, and then the user enters some numbers maybe, and then we convert it to integer. Exactly the same thing. So when we read the data from a file, it's always string. So we always have to convert it to the data type that we would like to do in our program. Any questions so far? No question? Then I'm moving on. Okay, so if you don't have any question, now I have questions for you. So which mode specifier will erase the contents of a file if it already exists, and create the file if it does not already exist? The first one, W, yes. So the mode, basically, what is the mode? The mode is in our code when we open the file. The mode is the second parameter, which is showing that whether we want to read, write, or append. So if you put W, if the file exists, it removes its content, and then we can put some new content in that. But if it file does not exist, it creates that file for you so that you can still work on that empty file. How about the next one? Which method could be used to strip specific characters from the end of a string? So, well, this might be hard to remember because what we had seen it before the break. But if you remember, rstrip, yes. So for those questions, actually, maybe you remember we had asked it also during the midterm and the quiz. Let's say that you have no idea about it, okay? But still, through the question, you can maybe find the answer. Like we said, okay, which could be used to strip specific characters. So we have strip, remove, and rstrip. So probably remove is not the right option. So it is either strip or rstrip. And then it says, okay, strip the characters from the end of the line. So it's not stripping any of it, but from the end of it. So what is the end of a string? It's the right side of part of it. So which means that, okay, then to rstrip also, R stands for right. So it strips the characters from the right side of the text, so that we can get rid of some characters that we are not needed. So basically, the correct answer is rstrip. How about the last one? Given that the customer file references a file object, and the file was opened using the W mode specifier, how would you write the string hello GNG 106 to the file? And the first one, know that there is a blank line here. Yes, so the last one should be the case. So what is this file? This question is saying basically, we have a customer file references file object. So which means, like if I had wrote it this, the question is saying that, okay, we have a a variable name called customer, which references to a file. Its name is not important for us, so this is, and it is saying that the file was opened using W mode. So this is what it says. And then the question is, okay, I want to write this GENG 106 to that file. How can I write it? Like if I have this, how can I write it? By using write function. And then in that one, I need to say hello GENG 106. Then that would write the document. So going back to our examples, well, if there's a blank line, you can immediately eliminate it because it will give us a syntax error. We cannot put a blank line here. So this cannot be the case. Here we say write and then W is a write mode, but we don't put this W when we are writing the data. We just use it when we are opening the file. So this should not be the case. So then this should be the only case that in which we say the customer dot write, and then it's the content that we want to put. Any questions so far? All right, then let's proceed. With your current knowledge, actually now you can do actually many things. Like if we learned loops, which allows us to do many things repeatedly and repeatedly. Like, and I will show it also here. And now we are also able to write some data to a file. So when you combine these two knowledges, actually it's kind of also kind of a risky. You can create a really large amount of data with a very few lines of code. Like what you can do is basically, I can write open a document with this W option, and then in that file, by using a for loop, in which maybe I go to how many zeros I have, 1 million, maybe 10 million, 100 million, maybe 1 billion times. Now I can put this text in that here, my appended data. So what will happen is, with this very limited number of lines of code, I will put my appended data 1 billion times into my file. If I run this code, well, it will give some probably, it will keep running. It will create a really large data for me. And maybe it will even fill my space. Probably it will fill my space, by the way. I need to kill it. Anyhow. But I can easily create now gigabytes of data. So now, actually, this is now, you need to be more careful about it when we are running it using this code. But also, if it's a very good opportunity for us. Now, you can actually process large-scale data. Like if you have 1 million of line data that you need to write a file, well, you can easily do it with some for loops and writing it to a file. This is still going on. I need to stop it. Otherwise, it will kill my data, computer. But let's see how much it is. Yeah, I'm not sure if it is readable from your side, but it says 285 gigabytes of text data. So it just generated within maybe 1 minute, almost 3 gigabytes of data, textual data. I could create a really large data by this. So now you can, this is what you are able to do it. I will just delete it. Otherwise, unnecessarily large data I will have here. And this ability will also allow you to process much more, to do much more sophisticated operations. And as an engineer as well, you will always deal with some sophisticated data. Like all the maybe some scientific data or so, and these are not some simple numbers. Usually you apply some long process on that. So this will allow us to keep that data, process it in, process and save it to a file. So when we are processing this kind of large data, one of the big challenges is that we don't know when the file ends. Like, I open this data, which is 100 megabytes of data maybe, and I don't know how many lines are there. I want to process it line by line, but I don't know how many lines are there. So in our previous examples, before the break, let me show you maybe to just a reminder. If you remember this text, we had a document and we want to read all the lines in that. But it was an easy file. We had already know that there are only 3 lines of code. So that's why we were just calling this read line code 3 times. But now let's say that we don't know how many lines there are. Then how can I go and read all the data in that file? So for that one, what we need is, well, of course we will use this read line method, which basically reads the file line by line. Whenever I call it, it will give me the next line for me. It has this sentinel value. What is a sentinel value? Do you remember? Sentinel value. It is a value that shows us that we came to the end. It's an invalid number. Like, to exit from the menu, press -1, for instance. -1 is our sentinel value. So we sometimes use those values that is invalid, that cannot be, so that we understand that we came to the end of the loop and we should exit. So this readline method also uses this empty string as a sentinel value, which means that when it comes to the end of the document, when there is no more line to read, it returns us an empty string. So we will use this so that, to be able to read all the files in a document. How will I do that? Well, first, let me create this file again. And yeah, it's here. I would like to fill this with some numbers, okay? Just for simplicity, I will just put some sequential numbers. And at the end, I will put this end of the file, okay? Let's say that this is our file content. And then I want to read it from my code. So what I should do is, well, I can first read the first line. So how can I do it? Well, in order to read it first, when I'm opening the file, I need to open it in the read mode. So I change this to R. And then I will, by using my file object, I will call readLine. And then it will give me the first line in my code, which is, in this example, it will be 1. But even though that the file might be empty, I'm assuming that I have no idea the content of the file. Is it empty? Is there 1 line, 0 line, or maybe 100 million lines? I don't know it. So what I will do is, in a while loop, I will check if the data that I read, the line that I read from the file, is an empty string. How can I do it? Well, I put one code, and then immediately one more code. Like, there is no even one single space. There's no even space. Okay, there's immediately 2 codes next to each other. It means that that string is empty. There's nothing in that. So if my line is not equal to this, it means that I could read something. So then I will do my operation. Let's say that I will just print my line. Okay. And then next, what I should do is, well, I need to read the next line, of course, like because I will keep reading it until I reach to the end of the document. So basically, I will just copy paste this code again, and I will put it here. So now what is happening here is I will read the first line, check if it is empty. If it is not, I will print it, and I will read the next line, and then I will check if it is empty. If it is not, I will print it, and then I will read the next line. So until when I reach to the end of the document, the read line document will give me empty string. So once it is an empty string, this will give me false, and then I will be able to exit from the while loop. So here I will put just a message to show that, okay, end of the reading operation, let's say. Now let's run our code. Let me clean this part of my screen and let's run it. All right, now I have this line. I have all these lines because I put line message here, and then I have this 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and end of file, which was basically my file content also, and then end of the reading operation, which comes from here. So now I could just read based on how many lines we have in this document, and do operations in my program. Do you have any questions so far? I have one question for you then. Let's say that I'll delete this line part, okay, just to print exactly the same thing in my file. So I will just rerun it again. Now this is my output. Okay, I printed this, but you note that there are some blank lines in that. But when I go to my document, which is here, as you can see that there is no blank line. Then why do I have this blank lines here? What might be the case? And how can I fix it? Any idea? I think there's some people who know it, but they're just hesitating to answer. Why do I have these blank lines? Which means that actually I'm printing two new lines here. Two new line characters. Why is that? Why does the second new line character coming? Because I'm reading this file. I read 1, but when I print 1, I print 1 and the blank line. Why is that? Any idea? Or if you don't know the reason, okay, how can we fix it? And do you have any solution? Yes. Actually, if you know the strip part, then you know the answer actually also. So when we are reading the file, I said that we read 1, but actually we didn't read only one character. We read two characters. There are two characters actually. One of them is 1, the other one is the new line character. So when we say read line, it gives me two characters, 1 and the new line character. If I remove that, so this is one new line I'm reading, and the other one is this print function. Print by default puts one new line character for me. So that's why I have one from the print function and one from the file. That's why I have two new lines here. If I change this print function value and parameter, its default value is new line. But if I change it to empty string, which means that it will not put by default a new line character, and then when I run this code, I will get the same output. So this is one way. Or you might say, okay, I don't want to do it. I can also change it in another way, which is by using this rstrip function. So I said that when I read 1, it's not only 1, it's 1, and always there's an and a new line character. I want to get rid of that. So how can I do it? By using this rstrip function, which was the function that we asked in the second question. So in that one, what we should do is, I want to remove from the end of the string, which characters, well, if there's any new line character, remove that. Okay, so that's why I put this new line there. And then when I now run this code again, I will get the same output as it is. So now what is happening here is, I read line, like maybe 1, but also a new line character. Then I remove it, and then I print 1 in that line, and then I move to the next line, and so on. So both solutions are correct. Any questions so far? Yeah, we have seen this part, and now reading line by line, I had shown you that, okay, we need to, if we go back to our code, I need to first write my line, and then in a while loop I need to check if I reach to the end of the line, and at each iteration I need to read the next line. So I need to write these 3 lines of code, but there is actually an easier way. So I will just comment those lines, the first line of code, the while loop, and the part that I need to read at each iteration. Instead of doing that, I can also use for loop to read files line by line. How is that possible? Well, if I say for, and then line to keep the data that will be read in each line, and then in, and then my file object. When I write this, what will happen is basically at each iteration of this for loop, it will give me 1 line from that file, from that object, and then it will keep it in this line variable. And then I will just print it. So when I run this code, I will get exactly the same output. So let's run it. And then you can compare the output here and also the here. So they are the same output. So in short, to read a file line by line, you can either use a while loop in which you have to read the line first and then check if it is not empty, and then do your operations, and then at the end of each iteration you need to read the next line. Or instead of these 3 lines of code, you can basically use a for loop in which you put this line, it's a variable name, it can be any name of course, and then my file object, which is the object that we use to open the file. And then, which means that then each iteration, this line variable will keep the next line, will keep the current line from that file, and then we can do our operations. So if you find this a little bit confusing, I can also remove these comment ones. So the main code is just this one. So it will be, so you will be able to read a file line by line by this following code.